There's a reason that you probably feel in a creative funk right now. You're showing up to a voice lesson and your coach is saying, "Hey, what do you want to work on today?" And you're like, "I don't even know," right? Or you're just feeling really, really discouraged in some of your personal artistic goals as a performing artist. And I have a theory for why you may be feeling this way.
Hola, my friend. I'm Melissa V. Cartwright, and welcome to the Passionate Performer podcast. You have a voice that deserves to be heard, and you also deserve to have a performance career where you don't feel like you're sacrificing who you are to meet the demands of the industry. So we are here to help you problem solve those challenges, figure out why we're feeling the way we do, and give you the next right step. You ready? Let's go.
Welcome, dear singer, listener, fellow badass performer. Thank you so much for hitting play on this. You hear podcast hosts say all the time, like, thank you so much for listening. It means a lot that you took this time to put this information in your ear holes and on your eyeballs and consume this conversation basically that we're having. And it's one that's been on my heart lately, especially as it pertains to some of the conversations and the overflow that's happening with some of my one-on-one clients, what I've been feeling personally, and finding that this is actually a collective feeling many of us have experienced, are experiencing right now. And it's not necessarily, oh my gosh, I just have to sing better or I have to master a skill. I think it comes back to a heart and perspective issue on how we consume art. Okay. Tell me if you identify with this, or I actually want you to take a minute to just take inventory of the last 6 months of your life. Have you been to a concert, been to a performance, sat at your local brewery, coffee house, listened to live music, gone to see a live show, gone to the movies, watched a new show, binge watched a new show on Netflix? In the last 6 months, have you done any of that? Okay. If you've checked a box, yes, let's move forward. The second question I want to ask of you is, when you were consuming that art form, were you having a second narrative going on in your brain thinking, oh, can I sound like that? I want to do that. Who do I need to contact? Who's the owner of this concert venue? Who's the event organizer? How do I get on their list? How do I connect with that musician? I want to perform with them. Okay. If you answered yes to any of that, that doesn't make you like a bad person or a bad artist. I think that actually makes you savvy. But here's the third point that I want us to get to that's going to take us on this journey today. Is that the only story narrative you've had in your mind as you've consumed this art? If the answer to that is yes, then I want to encourage us with today's conversation. There's nothing wrong with networking, like I said, okay? That makes you savvy, that you're thinking about future opportunities, and I think that's wonderful. But if you're only going to performances in your town or consuming live art form, if that's all you're doing, and that's all you're doing is networking, then of course, your artistic inspiration creative cup is running on empty because you're only thinking of beauty and inspiration as transactional. And that is, no wonder you're feeling uninspired. So I want to basically use the concept of Julia Cameron's Artist Date. We've talked about The Artist Way before. If you have not read that book, I highly recommend putting it on your fall to-do list. It's a beautiful journey that's going to get really, really deep and specific about where you're coming against these inspiration blocks. But one of the concepts that Julia Cameron lays out is the concept of the artist date. I love the way she words this. She actually says it's like taking your inner 8-year-old out to do something fun. And in the book, she actually encourages you to set an artist date for yourself every week, if possible, especially when you first start this process. And it does not have to be even artistically related. It could be trying a new meal at a new restaurant in town, going for your walk instead of your local park where you go every day or every time. Try a new place, Or it could be as fancy as, I'm finally going to get those tickets for this artist that's here in town, and I'm just going to bite the bullet and invite a friend to go with me and go. You can make it as simple or as sophisticated as you like, but it is time for yourself. And the only agenda is that you are there to consume and to enjoy. Okay. So that's it. And you're like, well, I guess that's the podcast, Melissa. I guess I'm just going to go do that. But I want to offer just a few real life stories of how this has transpired in my own life and the life of some of the artists that I've worked with, and what came after when we gave ourselves a chance to just do this with no agenda. As you know, and as I've been candid with you here on the podcast, I've had some big ass performance goals, like huge for myself personally, like producing, directing, writing, composing, arranging my own cabaret that I produced and did back in March. Just a couple weekends ago, I did the encore of my cabaret again. And I'll dedicate a whole nother podcast episode to that if you're interested. Let me know in the comments or on Instagram if you want that. But that was a huge, huge goal I had for myself this year. And thankfully, I've checked both boxes. But in the creation process for those things, I found myself in a season where all I did was network. And so because, number one, I really was trying to look for venues for artists to collaborate with in these platforms. I was just putting my business hat on basically to make it happen. But then the pendulum swung so far to one side that I wasn't doing anything else. I even got to a point where I wasn't listening to music for pleasure. Any music consumption was music from the cabaret, songs that my artists were working on in my coaching sessions. Or if I had a client who was in a local show and I wanted to be supportive and I had time and availability to go support them in the show. Because even at that point, I'm here to support my friend. I'm not even here to really appreciate what everybody's doing. And even when I sat in my seat, I still remember going to one show in particular and being like, Mel, come on, check in with yourself. And the moment, I just expanded my viewpoint on, let me really sit here as a true audience member, supporter of the arts, not just as a friend, not just as a voice coach, right? To really bask in the beauty and the excellence that was being displayed on stage by all of these artists, not just my client, but everybody on stage, and knowing what it takes to do that. When I actually breathed through that conversation in my head with myself, I even felt my shoulders relax. And then I could really appreciate everything that was taking place in front of me, the story that was being told. And I found that in the seasons of hustle, because there are seasons, and there are seasons, right, where it's tech week, it's the final dress rehearsal, it's whatever that last step is before you actually get on stage, before you actually do the thing, or you step into the recording studio. There's a moment of acceleration happening in that moment, energetically, work-wise, vocally, mentally. You're having to keep your health in check to make sure you can still perform and do what's asked of you and do what you wanted to do. And then the moment happens of you doing the thing, and then comes a season of exhaling, right? Of rest, renewal. So even in the hustle season, these moments of checking in with myself personally, with where my intentions were as I was consuming this art, and that I basically gave myself artistic off the clock moments where art was no longer business. Art was no longer a means for a sale. Art was no longer a means for getting a new client or for booking another gig, but it was just the beauty of what I was consuming, what was right in front of me. Something else that happened for me personally this year was I really delved into, number one, I was really trying to, check myself with my pre-bedtime routine. And instead of being on a screen, even if I was just dozing off to a movie on my iPad, I was really trying to shift and take away the electronic and just read a book in bed. And I became a huge Taylor Reid's Jenkins fan this year. It started with The Seven Husbands of Evelyn and Hugo. And then I just went down the list of all of her other books. And so I've become a new fan. I've created a new habit for myself, but that was a creative, artistic form, consuming literature where I let my imagination run wild. I could escape. It was such a beautiful balance that actually really did relax my brain and my body before bed. So there were physical health benefits there, in addition to just having pockets of different art forms that weren't associated with singing, with music, okay? And I would say that this is another point of contention when I've been in conversations with some of my clients. I will always tell my clients, make sure that you are consuming art that has nothing to do with music, that has nothing to do with singing, because it becomes our entire world. It becomes our entire identity. And if we don't have layers, levels to who we are as singers and artists, then when something goes awry with that art form, in our case, if something goes wrong with the sound of our voice, our world falls apart because we associate our worth, our identity with the sound of our voice. We are not our voice. We have a voice. We have a means of communication. Is it a living instrument like we talk about here a lot? Of course, it's housed inside of your body that has breath, right? That has blood flowing through its veins. But you are not the amalgamation of all things music, of all things singing. You're just a vehicle of communication, and your communication happens to be singing, using your voice to speak, to share music, to share art. So I think that's probably one of the biggest components of making sure that when you're consuming art and consuming it for art's sake, it's helping to bring balance to this narrative in your head that the buck does not stop with you, right? You are one of many billions of singers in this world, and you have something to share that nobody else has in the way that they do it. So that also brings a little balance to, oh my goodness, let me do something else that's not singing related. Here's why. If you've ever walked into a voice lesson, for instance, and your voice coach is like, all right, girl, what are we going to do? And you're like, I don't know. You have nothing on your agenda. You kind of come empty-handed a little bit, like a blank canvas. Number one, it's kind of difficult to work with that. But at the same time, I understand why that may be. Life be lifing sometimes, right? Just the stresses of life. But also, too, I've seen that is a byproduct of not having any artist dates for yourself. If you're a songwriter, where are you getting your inspiration? Is it solely from your life's experiences? Are you reading? How are you consuming information? Only on your phone? Are you only writing about those things? Or do you feel like you're in a dry spell, like you have lack of inspiration? Because those are the only ways you're receiving information, and your life is void of any other artistic expression. Do you see the cycle, the cause and effect? I'm not trying to be prescriptive saying it all happens because of this, but this is a main culprit as to why you may be feeling dry in the inspiration well. So for instance, I started making sure that throughout that hustle season of creating this cabaret, of producing it, of doing it, and other seasons of my life that have been very full, just with the logistics and the rehearsals of an upcoming gig, that I have made it a point to take myself out on an artist date. And I'm going to share with you one of my favorite places, okay? My favorite place to go on an artist date is the Fresh Market. And here's why. I often fantasize about a European vacation. It's just always one of those things that's been on my dream list to do, either with my spouse or as a family. My girls are older, so now I kind of dream about backpacking through Europe as a family of 4, and they love the idea as well. One of the places I want to go so badly is Sevilla, Spain, do the Mediterranean coast, but really all of Europe would just be a dream. And so why the Fresh Market? The Fresh Market strategically has designed their store to make you feel as though you are in a European market. You walk in, sometimes they have classical music playing. The first thing you see are flowers and produce. And whether they have one of those mists that sprays those odors into the air, or it is the actual flower and produce that you are smelling, my senses come alive. My eyes, what I hear, my nose comes alive the minute that I walk into that store. And I just use my imagination, like my inner 8-year-old. That is how I'm doing it. I am pretending that I've got my bougie little bag or basket and I'm walking through a European town and, I'm picking some flowers and looking at the produce. P.S. I do not do my regular grocery shopping there, so this is not a sponsorship. I'm on a budget too. So when I do have a moment to splurge, even if I'm only going to get a cup of coffee or maybe pick up some dessert for my family there, that's what I like to do. And I'll go and I'll walk around the Fresh Market and I'll look at the new stuff that they have. And sometimes, if maybe I've also done this where I do take myself out to lunch by myself. It's not a working lunch. I repeat, this is not a working lunch. I do not have my computer. I am not sitting in their little cafe area, getting on a computer, not even getting on my phone, as hard as that is. I put my phone aside. I'm enjoying my little chicken salad sandwich on a croissant with my coffee, maybe a little piece of like decadent chocolate or whatever it is. And I'm just trying to be present and slow down. Slow down and let all of my senses come alive in that moment. Now, will I ever take my European vacation one day? I hope so. I hope to take it one day. But for my imagination and for what works for my brain and my body in this season where I am trying to find ways of being more present, as an artist, that feeds me. And I still remember that one of the artist dates that I took myself on when I was having dinner. It was a dinner time at the Fresh Market because I was actually waiting on a kid to be done with rehearsal. And I had a few moments to myself. So it actually became an accidental artist date. It was around the holidays. And I remember that they were playing choral music over the speakers. And one of the songs was a song that I sang when I was in my college choir. Those days of collegiate choir singing were some of my favorite. I have very fond memories, musical, artistic memories of that season in my life. And I remember listening to this and having a moment where I was in a bit of a dry spell creatively. My family had just made some shifts personally, like where we were going to go to church, and it was around the holidays, and I wasn't participating in any way, shape, or form in any of my church's programming. I wasn't booked for a holiday show or anything. And that moment it was like a sweetness. That's the only way I can describe it. There was a sweetness to it. And it was a way for me to have nostalgia without sadness, because I remember that time also being very sad for me personally. In that moment, I was just able to recall a very happy memory, that was accompanied by yummy food and one of my favorite places to walk around and to have an artist date in. And see, this is the importance of doing this for yourself, because here's what's happening. You're going to a local restaurant where they have live music, or you got a ticket for the local community theater production. And instead of sitting there and being present and just taking it all in, you're sitting there constantly comparing your voice, your skill set to that of the artists that you are watching. If you're constantly living in that comparison mode, that too is going to zap you dry of your inspiration. The next time you do go to a concert and you are in awe of someone else's skill set, and you have that moment of, I'll call it diet jealousy or comparison or envy, use that as information. What are you going to do about it? Ask yourself, I don't know that person's story. I really don't know what it took for her to sing that way. And because I don't know the full story, I'm not going to sit here and try to deduce, speculate how she did that and if I can do that. Because she has her story, I have mine. That'll be a good barometer for you the next time you're sitting there and the comparison wheel starts a churning. If you leave that concert, that show, and you're still thinking about that person and there's a longing within you, I think that's fine. Let it inspire you to take action. And then you can decide, what action do I need to take? Do I need to book a voice lesson? Do I need to pick up an instrument? Do I need to talk to somebody? That can be a healthy checks and balances in those moments when either the jealousy comes up or the whole I'm not good enough starts to bubble. All right, that's a good way. I don't want to say combating because I don't want you to be at war with yourself, but just get curious with that. Get curious with those emotions and be like, why am I feeling this way? What do I need to do? So where can we go from here, my friend? I want you this week to set up an artist date for yourself. As simple as, I'm going to hit up my fresh market. I'm with Melissa. I'm going to try that new ice cream joint. Or, like I said, just going to a show that week. Find out if there is live music in your area, right? Let it be whatever. There's no judgment. There's no limits. The only rule is that really, there's no agenda when you go do it. Then when you do, pay attention to your senses. Colors, sounds, feelings, smells. Seriously, what is sparking those things, waking those things up inside of you? And just take note. You don't have to actually literally jot it down because then that's going to feel like homework. But just pay attention. Pay close attention. And then when you get home afterwards is a great time to reflect, to write it down, to just write it out as though it's like a story, a narrative. I went to such and such place and tap all the senses. This is what I felt. This is what I heard. This is what I smelled. This is what I saw. This is what I said. How did it make you feel? You might find then that the sparks of creativity and inspiration come after the fact because you've given yourself space to be present. And practicing presence is exactly what we as passionate performers long so badly to have, especially then when it's time for us to get on stage or time for us to communicate with song in front of somebody else without constantly being in a tailspin mentally, emotionally, or even physically. So, if you are going to schedule that artist date, let me know, spill it. I want to know where you're going. If you feel comfortable sharing, I want to be able to cheer you on. And even let me know how it went. We might inspire each other with some new places that we can go, experiment, and schedule these artist dates for ourselves. Because the most important thing, my friend, is connecting from a place of authenticity, of honesty, as you perform with passion. If you would like more on how you can go deeper with tools and strategies on how to make this a practice in your singing, in your performance prep, check out my Passionate Performer program. All those details are in the show notes. And as always, my friend, I am cheering you on. You got this.